Hi, everybody. I'm Caryn Hartglass, and you're listening to It's All About Food. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects. Okay, not just food, but being fit, which is an ongoing project for me and maybe a rediscovered passion. We'll see. In order to address my rediscovered passions about being fit as a vegan, we're going to be talking to Ella Majors, MSW, who is on a mission to transform the health and wellness industry from the inside out. Vegan since 1995. Woo! Ella founded Sexy Fit Vegan in 2013 to pave the way for veganism to enter the mainstream by making compassion sexy. Ella's desire to revolutionize our mindsets around eating and fitness is wholehearted and flows from a deeply personal place. Ella has led workshops across the globe and has been featured on some of the world's most popular platforms, including Shape, bodybuilding.com, and HuffPost. Her work as a podcast host, speaker, published author, and coach gives people the tools to heal and thrive holistically and become empowered to move through the world with profound curiosity and fierce compassion for all living beings. Thank you for joining me, Ella.
Oh, it's great to be here, Caryn. Thanks for having me on.
Okay. I'm reading your bio, and no apologies here, but the way I work is always just in time. I do things just in time, and it works. It gets done. So I don't know much about you, and I'm just reading your bio out loud. I may have scanned it before months ago when we decided to do this podcast, but I really know very little about you. And two things popped out while I was reading it. One is yesterday on my daily walk with my partner, Gary. We walk every day, power walk. Sometimes I run for 60 minutes or more in the neighborhood. And we were talking about politics and all the things that are going wrong. And I said, we should make compassion sexy. And it's right here in your bio. And I'm like, okay. I like when things are coincidental, synchronicity, it works. I also love pairing the word fierce with compassion. So I approve of your bio.
Thank you.
Anyway, that's my story. Now I'm going to leave it over to you. Welcome and tell me yours.
Yeah, well, I haven't been vegan as long as you, I think, right?
Yeah, 36 years for me.
36 years. So thank you for that. And yeah, I do. Yeah, I pair the compassion with the fierce because how I kind of see myself, I've got so many different sides to me. And I'm a Gemini, so maybe that explains a little bit of it. I don't know. But I'm a fighter in that I've been practicing Muay Thai, kickboxing for 22 years now. And so I've got this fighter spirit. And on the other end of that, I have always been really connected to compassion. And so I in some ways they seem like very different things, and in other ways they go really well together. So I've been into sports and fitness since the age of 5. I started with gymnastics and swimming. I was doing taekwondo and dance. And by the time I got to high school, I was competing volleyball as well. So I have been always very active. And it was when I was 7 years old that I became a vegetarian. So for anyone, yeah, okay. I've told this story a lot, but I think it's worth telling. I got in the car after school one day. My mom had picked me up to take me to gymnastics practice and asked how my day was. And I told her that we had learned about Daniel Boone. So I really have Daniel Boone to thank for my whole existence, I feel like, and discovering my purpose in life, because I told my mom I didn't understand because he was supposed to be a hero. And in case anyone doesn't know Daniel Boone, he was one of our first American folk heroes. He was a wilderness guy. He carried around a shotgun, wore a raccoon hat. And I was like, this guy was so mean, Mom. He killed animals and he ate them. And my mom looked at me and she was really honest. And she said, well, Ella, we're very fortunate nowadays. We get to go to the grocery store to buy our meat. We don't have to do that ourselves anymore. And it was literally that moment that I connected the meat on my plate with the animal that it was. And I was horrified. And I told my mom right then and there, I said, well, that's it. I'm never doing that again. And I literally never ate meat again.
Well, I'm applauding you, and you're obviously very smart, especially not to fall into the narrative that our society wants us to believe.
Yeah.
You
And I felt
connected
so
the dots.
strongly.
Well, the
Yeah.
animals are still being killed, right?
Yeah, and the thing was I started, my parents thought it would be a phase. And so I just started eating the side dishes, the green beans and leaving the pork chops or whatever it was. And I was very vocal about it. It was like I knew intuitively that that was my purpose on earth, was to be a voice for animals. And I started writing about it in school, like assignments in elementary, middle school. I would say, I don't understand. Why are we eating animals? We have so many other things we can eat. This doesn't make any sense. Why do we have to kill animals? And so I was just very vocal about it. And by the time I was 15, I had connected with local animal rights organizations. Now, this was back in 1987 when I went vegetarian, and then 1995 when I went vegan. And as you know, this was not a very popular thing to do back then. A lot of people didn't even know what the word vegan was, but I was under the thought process that, well, surely if I just tell everybody what's
They'll
going
get it.
on, right, behind the closed doors of factory farms, they just don't know. I didn't know. And then I knew. And then I immediately went vegetarian or vegan. And so I was like, I just need to tell people. So I set out to, I was an activist. I didn't think about it like that so much, but I was pamphleting, leafleting, leading protests. I bless my parents' hearts, they would drop me off and I would sit in a cage on the side of the road to demonstrate the conditions of farmed animals. And of course, I was met with so much resistance, which was a really bitter pill to swallow, because I had set out with so much hope that I could make a massive impact very quickly, simply by spreading information.
Yeah. Instead, you learned about humans and humanity and
I
our
did.
flaws.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So let's jump into being fit, because you told us your story and you've been involved in fitness and moving in the body for a long time. And many of us have not. And we were not that physically active growing up. And it's becoming more and more of a problem with the newer generations. And then we go to a job and we sit at a desk. And then maybe in our later years, we're figuring out, some people decide they want to incorporate more fitness. And is that possible, really? Because for you built up all this muscle when you were young, and many people are starting with nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, a whole different thing. I became vegan very young. I started, in fitness and athletics very young. So yes, a lot of people are not relating in that way. And I've helped a lot of people over the years that got a late start. And so, yeah, we have to start slow. And yes, it's challenging to build that, but to also do it from the beginning really smart, in smart ways, where you're incorporating not only the strength and the cardio, but also mobility, right? And working your ways in bodies that counteract the lifestyle that we have, right? With sitting down so much of the time, with having our phones now, we're all developing terrible posture. Biomechanics are thrown off from the phone and the computer and all the technology. So by starting to do the fitness in a way that's very, very intentional about not only getting in the strength aspect, which is really, really important, especially as we age, but also mobility in ways that help us develop the posture that we need to live long, healthy, active lives and feel good in our bodies.
Yeah, my brother-in-law was just telling me the other day, if we fall at our age, like, we're dead. I mean,
Right.
so many people fall and break their hips, and shortly thereafter, they're gone. So, and I don't want to jinx anything, but I fell yesterday or 2 days ago walking, and I was really proud of myself. I kind of did this, it went in slow motion. People talk about when accidents or things happen, you kind of like slowly think of what's happening, but it was really a beautiful fall. I kind of protected myself. I went into a roll. It was like, oh, was almost like choreographed. Not that I want to do that all the time.
Right. So what kind of, besides walking and running, what do you do, Caryn?
Yoga, definitely. And I think
Awesome.
yoga really helps with falling
Yes.
because you kind of go into uh like you can go into a plank pose almost, and then it depends on the fall, but I think yoga really helps with balance and stability, and it allows you to fall if for some reason you're out of balance when you're doing a balance pose, and you learn from that.
1,000%. Yoga is fabulous for so many things. You got your balance and just getting up and on, up and off the floor, getting down and up off the floor in different ways. That's so important for longevity. The other great part about yoga is that we can do it until the day we die. We literally can do some version of yoga till the day I die. And I got into yoga really for the physical aspect of it when I was in my late 20s. So I had beaten my body up. So fitness, yes, I was into it. And yes, I was very strong and athletic, and I won a bikini competition and all these things. And I had this MO of, tough girl, Muay Thai fighter. And to think about slowing down for me, that was really, really hard. And my body was really beat up. Muay Thai is pretty brutal. So I kind of felt like almost forced into it. If my body was going to continue, I needed to do it. And it took many years of doing it before I really connected with yoga as more of a holistic type of fitness, right? And so now I am a huge advocate. I'm actually getting a yoga teacher certified in November to add that to my resume. And I'm a big advocate. And I think that it's really important to also adjust some of what we do in yoga, depending on your teacher, because there is still a lot of forward folding. And this, do you know what I mean with the forward folding?
No, tell me.
So, so much yoga is trying to get your head to your feet
In like a forward bend.
Forward bend. Yeah. Forward fold, but forward bend. And when it's not done correctly, it ends up you're actually bending at the back instead of lengthening the hamstrings. So it's just a really important point. So sometimes our ego gets in the way and we're like, I'm going to try to touch my nose to my knees. And you're actually not working on your hamstring flexibility. You're exacerbating a hunched over back, which is what we do in everyday life. So it's really important when I'm talking about being intentional with our movement to really understand these mechanics and understand what we're doing every day. And wow, we need to do twice as many back bends as we're doing forward bends.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So just thinking about that is really important.
I'm in a back bend new phase. So I think I mentioned this last week on the program, but I've learned yoga through videos. I'm not someone who goes to class. And, it's different for everybody because going to class with a good teacher can be very, very instructive where they're adjusting you. But I've always been a self-learner, and there were a few videos back in the 90s that I fell in love with, and I've come back to them just recently. And one of them was this quote beginner video, and it's not beginner when it comes to back bends, with Patricia Walden, and she does 5 back bends. And I used to be able to do them pretty well, and now it's very challenging, but I'm determined to get back there. And I'm discovering all those parts in my body that I kind of forgot about. But I always knew that the back bend was one of my favorite poses. It really, it almost gives you a high when it's done right, to be able to, it's so hard to explain, but it's so invigorating.
Agreed. And
but
they call it a heart opener too, right?
Yeah.
And it opens the heart. And then, talking about the holistic view of yoga, it's important to think about all that stuff. And yes, backbending is really challenging, in part because we are doing the opposite most of the day.
You're right. But there are different, as you know, there are different kinds of back bends where some are a lot more practical for many people than doing an upward bow, which requires a lot more. It's not really a beginner pose.
Not at all. Not at all.
So tell me about Sexy Fit Vegan, where we're going, what you do.
Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, founded Sexy Fit Vegan in 2013. This is after healing my own relationship with food. In my 20s, I had it's interesting because the fitness industry, and it's changing now, but the fitness industry really has had very little to do with true health, right? It's really about what you look like on the outside, right? Building the physique that you want. And having a really strong built body on the outside doesn't necessarily mean you are fit and healthy on the inside. So this was, back in the early 2000s, and I was surrounded by bodybuilders. I'm working out at gyms. I'm a personal trainer at that point, running some health clubs, and surrounded by meat-eating bodybuilders who were obsessed with protein, terrified of carbs. I'm trying to meet the same macro counts, so the same amount of protein and carbs and all of that as they were, but doing it all vegan, of course, which would make anyone crazy. Plants have carbohydrates, and carbohydrates are essential for our health and performance, and they're demonized very much in the diet culture and the fitness culture. So, so I developed, and also at that point, my way of fulfilling my life's purpose was to be the shining example of the physique that most people wanted for themselves, because it gave me an in. Right? People would actually come up to me and say, "What are you doing?" And I'd say, "Oh, I'm doing this all with plants. Let me show you how." And people were actually open when they thought, "Oh, I can maybe look like you." So there was a lot of pressure I was putting on myself, mixed with being in that bodybuilding culture, which is so unhealthy. I mean, bodybuilders, a lot of times they're doing the Monday through Saturday extreme restriction, and then Sunday they will do a cheat day, and it's a day-long binge on. I mean, I've seen bodybuilders eat an entire pizza and a dozen donuts in one day on their cheat day, and then go back to basically starving themselves the rest of the week. So I was very much in that restrictive cycle, and then my willpower would run out, and I would end up binging on things like cereal or nuts, peanut butter. Those were my things that when my willpower ran out and I was feeling, weak or whatever, that's what I would eat. And but I didn't want to tell anybody. It felt like a problem, but I didn't want to tell anybody because I didn't want them to blame it on me being vegan. And I wanted to be this example. So there was a lot of inner turmoil in that time. Went back to school, got my master's degree in social work, started the yoga, really worked on coaching myself through these things, and was able to really heal my relationship, build a whole brand new relationship with food and my body. And when I started Sexy Fit Vegan in 2013, it was really with this thought of, all right, I'm not feeling fulfilled as a personal trainer. I want to be loud and proud about the vegan thing again. And what will help people, come my way, sexy and fit. I mean, that sounds pretty good. So I was like, let's go with it. I did a website, started a blog, and back then, not a lot of influencers in that space. So got a lot of recognition. I got a book deal. I was featured on a lot of different mainstream magazines and things like that. And I eventually started developing coaching programs. So that was my thing when I had no idea how I was going to monetize this business at first. And then I had a business coach be like, I can help you start a group coaching program, which were at first focused on the actual food, the actual nutrition, helping people make the transition to plant-based. Then I realized just how many people had the limiting factor that their relationship with food was really unhealthy. So it wasn't about the knowledge anymore. It was about, but I have these cravings and I give in to them and I don't know how to stop them. And I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and yet I can't seem to make myself do it. So my coaching programs, and I had the, master's degree to back it up, and I got certified as an eating disorder recovery coach. And so my programming really evolved to focus a lot on our relationship with food and our bodies. So that's what I've been doing ever since. And I've got a new coaching program specifically for emotional eaters coming out. And I just put out a emergency cravings toolkit that is free for everybody to help them get started, to explore the different reasons why we eat, because true hunger is only one out of the 4 reasons I talk about in the toolkit. And then I have a 5-step process called the peace process. It's a framework for helping people know what to do in those moments when they have a craving and they feel out of control.
The whole craving concept is quite interesting. I know that a handful of vegans have used the term cravings for their reason to not be vegan anymore.
Yeah.
And with myself, there's no not being vegan. For me, it's hardline ethical philosophy.
Yes.
And that's not the same for everyone. And yeah, I get that. So I don't see things that are animal based as anything I would put in my mouth. That's me. I can only speak for myself. Yeah. I don't know what's going on in anybody else's head. But then there's today in 2024, there's so much variety out there, and there's plenty of products that aren't healthy. And I've been whole food plant-based for a long time. I don't go for stuff that's in boxes and donuts, you know, but I'll admit occasionally I would like to try something that's vegan and decadent or whatever, holidays, whatever. And this has caused me ultimately, I am now doing SOS free, nutritarian, no oil, no sugar, no salt. And it's for personal reasons. I'm not saying everybody should do it, although, you know, I'm thinking probably everybody should do it. But society makes it very hard. And I'm a disciplined person, so I can do this. But not being able to eat in a restaurant, there are ways to navigate through restaurants and make healthier choices, but still, what I'm doing basically right now is we just don't eat out anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a major thing to give up, because we're social people and I love to promote vegan restaurants. But when it comes to cravings, when you're not eating anything that's bad for you,
yep,
you don't crave those things anymore. That's what I was getting at. So I just don't crave. I crave eating because I'm eating at specific times. We exercise, we come back, we have an appetite. And I want to eat, but it's the healthy food that I want to eat.
Yeah.
Okay, enough preaching. That's just me.
No, it's a really good, I'm so glad you shared that, because it's such an important, these are important points to make. Yes, the way out of cravings is to stop eating the foods that trigger cravings, which are salt, oil, and sugar. Right. So, and not everybody's ready to go there. Yeah. And that's okay. Right. And yes, right. You really can't. I mean, there are very few places you can go out to eat and get anything that's salt, oil, sugar free. Yep. Vegan restaurants included. So,
yep, that's very true. Mm-hmm. So investors out there is a need for this.
Such a need. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That would be.
And what we make at home is phenomenal. We make really delicious food without salt, oil, and sugar. Yeah. It's possible. Yes. Anyway, back to you.
Yeah, no, well, there's, you know, the reasons we eat are true hunger. Our body needs nourishment, needs fuel. Then we can call that a physical need. Then there's a physical desire, and that has to do with addiction. Right. And we think about, and this is where the problem is, you know, if somebody's saying, oh, no, my body needs cheese, let's say, because I'm craving cheese, my body must need it. Well, a heroin addict craves heroin. Does that mean that heroin is healthy? Obviously not, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a very fair comparison because these foods light up those reward centers in our brain. So there's the addiction piece. Then there's the emotional side of things, an emotional desire. And that can come in the form of needing to comfort or numb ourselves from negative emotions, from boredom, from stress, or as part of celebration. So more of a society kind of thing, right? Like celebrations, we grew up, that's the time everyone overeats. That's the time people eat the foods that they know are terrible for them. And they say, but it's okay because it's a holiday. And so we carry these programs with us, and it becomes just our new normal. It becomes our relationship with food. And there are ways to start to shift that programming, shift our relationship with negative emotions, for example. You know, we think that they're bad. Well, there are healthy and there are unhealthy negative emotions. And when we resist our emotions, when we try to run, hide, and distract ourselves from them, they come back even stronger. They're not going away, right? So it's a really important tool to start to learn to pause and to realize that just because we have a craving, just because we have a negative emotion, just because we have these experiences doesn't mean we need to act on them right away. And, connecting movement and food, yoga is such a great way because if you look at it as a way to practice mindfulness, practice being that observer role, practice being in the moment, using that movement, which for me, that's a lot more accessible. That was how I got into meditation, was a moving meditation. So for people that like to move, it's such a great way to practice that mindfulness without having to necessarily sit in meditation if that's something that's hard for you. So I use movement as a tool to practice the same tools that you're practicing on the mat that you get to take off the mat and practice when you sit down at the table.
We're talking about addiction a little bit. I want to say you can almost get addicted to movement because when you're into it and you're not moving, your body's like, okay, when are you going to get me moving? We got to do this.
Yes. And I'm totally somebody who that is completely me in the past. It has not totally gone away. And I'm in a healthy space where I'm not overtraining, but I overtrained for years, and that is equally as harmful.
Right.
That's very harmful to your body as well, overtraining.
You've mentioned a number of times in different scenarios here already how people will reward themselves with bad things, bad food, after doing something good. Now, either it's depriving themselves of eating all week and then they binge, or maybe it's a celebration and they allow themselves to consume the foods that don't nourish them.
Yeah.
How do we reprogram that?
Yeah, no, we've got to really recognize it first, right? Because we think that that's just the norm. And then it's about really shifting our thought process and our mindset around that reward. So when we're saying this unhealthy food is a reward or a treat or a cheat, what we're telling ourselves is that all the other food we're eating, all the healthy food, when we're not, quote, treating ourselves, the unhealthy food is the opposite of a reward, which makes zero sense if we really think about it, right? This is really about challenging our own belief systems, which are not really our own. Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about how the first 7 years of our lives you love Dr. Bruce?
I love Dr. Bruce Lipton.
He's the best, right? Oh my God.
I attribute him partially to saving my life. That's another story.
Oh, yes. Well, yes. I've done his community calls. Sometimes I'd like to talk to him with Uncle Bruce. Anyway, yeah. So he talks about, the first 7 years of our lives, our minds are kind of like a wiped hard drive being programmed by the influencers in our lives, our parents, society, teachers, media, all of those things, to create our perception of reality, which we come to believe is the reality. And it includes all our beliefs about who we are, what we're capable of. It includes our beliefs about what is right and wrong, eating animals, for example. And most of that programming is highly limiting. And it's our subconscious mind that runs the show 90 to 95% of the time if we are not intentional. So the key here is getting out of that programming, stepping into our conscious mind and actually evaluating, using mantras like, just because I have a thought doesn't make it true. Really getting curious. And that's why I use curious in my bio as well. This is about approaching ourselves and the world with a whole lot of curiosity and compassion and having understanding about that. So getting really curious. What does this mean, a reward? How is it really a reward if, yes, for the 5-10 minutes I'm eating it, it tastes really good? That's great. Okay, there's a pro. Then what's going to happen after, right? 5 minutes later, you're still craving it, and then you're fighting your cravings. An hour later, my stomach doesn't feel so good. A couple hours later, I'm crashing because I just ate a ton of sugar. Now I feel really bad. What's going to happen long term? Doing this consistently, I gain weight. I have low energy every day. I don't feel well. I develop diseases. I am going to be in the hospital. I'm going to be on medication. Okay, so if we're looking at the pros and the cons here, is this really a reward? Is this really a treat?
And then the mind says, but I'm just going to do it this one time, not very often.
No, no, no. And then we
No.
get into that mindset of, okay, well, I already had one cookie. This is another group of us all or nothing people. Well, I already messed up. I already had one cookie. I'll just have one more. After two, you're like, oh, now I really messed up. You know what? I don't want this in my house tomorrow. So I'm going to eat the whole bag of cookies because then it'll be good. Then it'll be gone.
Right.
And this is very common, right?
Yes.
This is so common. And then we feel so shameful. And then we hide that from people. We don't feel good in our bodies. We don't feel good about our decisions. And then it turns into just this self-sabotaging cycle. And then we kind of starve ourselves to make up for it and thinking this time's going to be different. I've got the willpower this time. I'm really motivated. And then the craving comes and the cycle starts all over again.
So can we celebrate things without food?
Right? Can we?
Or are there healthy foods that we can celebrate with?
Yeah, and it's not to say, I don't want everyone to think that this means you can never have anything again. And ideally, sure, right? There's a whole spectrum of what's ideal and what's not. And it really depends on what you want for yourself and your life and your social life and all of these things, right? So it's really creating that balance that works for you. For me, I got rid of refined sugar many years ago in my life, almost exclusively. I was completely refined sugar free for quite a while to lose that craving for it, which I had my doubts back then. I was like, am I really going to lose my craving for it? Because I was so used to having a little coconut milk ice cream after dinner, right? That little craving, you just need that little sweet thing after to feel complete. And I was like, I don't like being ruled by that. I don't like that feeling out of control. I don't like having that desire every single night. So I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go 6 weeks refined sugar free. After 6 weeks, I was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to keep going. And before too long, I completely lost my taste for refined sugar. I don't crave it. This is years and years later. And just the other weekend, for example, my niece turned 7 years old and they're vegan, my sister's family too. Yes. And I went over to their house and they had this big, beautiful vegan cake that totally had sugar in it. And it was just like 6 of us sitting at the table and they're cutting the cake. And I sat there and I thought about it, right? And my choices are I can say no, or I could have a piece of cake with everybody else. And I made the conscious choice in that moment to have a piece of cake. And because I made that conscious choice, because I weighed the pros and the cons, I knew exactly that I wasn't going to feel well later. And I said, and sitting here and having this with my family right now is important to me enough that this is going to be my choice today. And I didn't feel guilty about it. I went on with my day. I didn't go and have more. I went and had green juice later, right? To kind of counter it a little bit. And that was my decision. So my point is, this is about really having these moments of making a conscious choice, being mindful and making a choice that's in line with your values, with your goals, and then enjoying every bite. Whatever you choose, you enjoy every bite and you eat it mindfully. And mindful eating is another game changer when it comes to our relationship with food.
I think too, it's helpful to think about those things before you go to an event.
Yes.
If you can.
1000%.
And be prepared, knowing I'm going to a birthday party. There will be cake. I will be offered cake. What am I going to do before I'm looking at it? Make the choice.
Yes, Caryn, such a good point.
Yeah.
Especially at the beginning.
Yeah. We gave up alcohol a couple of years ago. I mean, we're really big, fun people now. But before that, when I would go to a party, I would do that kind of mental exercise. Okay, there's going to be a lot of alcohol here. What am I doing? What am I going to drink? How many? Because once you have that first drink, Pew! All the decisions go out the window unless you made a conscious choice beforehand. Oh, I told myself no more. That's it. Bum. Life is
So
hard.
much. It is. It is.
Hard.
And it can also be really fascinating, right? If we can shift from this is difficult to this is really interesting. And it's a really powerful, that approaching the world with curiosity. It's, if we can get curious, it turns into sort of like a game, right? And this exploration of ourselves and this discovering our blind spots. And if we can stay in that conscious mind and be curious, things feel a little less difficult and a little more interesting. And that's the place that I really like to help my clients get. And some days are hard, and we're going to have ups and downs, right? Like today I woke up and I was like, oh, my energy is a little off today. What can I do? Like I can just, let myself, but I've got this interview. So what am I going to do? I was like, let me check in with my boyfriend and see if he's got any tips. And he's a breath work guy. And I was like, let me do a little breath work. So I did 10 little sweeps with the breathing out, and I could immediately feel my energy start to shift. But it's okay, like to know that it's okay. And one of the mantras that I adopted about 2 years ago when I had a period of burnout and ended up in Peru doing a 12-day ayahuasca retreat. Yes, that was talk about interesting. Yes. But the book I was reading at that moment before I went down there was The Presence Process by Michael Brown. And the quote that really stood out to me was, the goal is not to feel better, it's to get better at feeling. And that resonated so much with me at that moment, because it took this pressure off. Like, I'm supposed to be the most positive person all the time, and I'm representing the vegan movement, and I don't have the right to be down or depressed or, no, I get to not feel great all the time. I get to have periods of sadness, and I get to give myself permission to have those times. And can I use them as opportunities to get better at feeling, to sit in it and be okay with that for a little bit? And what happens is that we end up moving through those periods a lot faster when we accept them.
Really good stuff. Yes.
Right.
It's so important to recognize when our body needs to rest.
Yes.
And it may not be for a long time. Like you said, if you do those simple exercises, you can get invigorated pretty quickly. And then sometimes we actually do need to just stop and just read a book or something, or do nothing, just be. And it's all
just
okay.
Be. Oh, that's been a journey for me. Yeah. Going from that just shift of like worthiness of doing versus we're just inherently worthy. Just, we get to be.
Yeah.
Just being.
It's fall here in New York, the best season in New York. It's probably unseasonably warm. It's supposed to go to 78 today, and it's October 21st. And but there's a fall fragrance in the air, and I'm just so into breathing it. Just sitting, taking in the extra sun that we're getting right now and breathing.
Yes. Yeah.
Very good. So you're doing this coaching thing, and we'll get into it a bit because I think you want to announce some things that are happening coming up in the future, perhaps. But how do you start with someone, let's say someone who has a very busy life, job, family, all kinds of stuff, and you've got to find the moments to make these changes, to incorporate movement, to incorporate preparing healthier foods?
Yeah, well, it all starts with the mind. And the first thing that we do is not, okay, let's get on a diet plan, in a workout program. That's not the first thing we do. The first thing we do is get really good at becoming the observer, of stepping into the conscious mind, of starting to approach ourselves and the world with curiosity and compassion. That's the first step, which is very counterintuitive. And most people have tried 1,000 times to start a program, and their busy lives get in the way, or whatever gets in the way. So we take a very different approach. We start with the mind because guess what? It really doesn't take a whole lot of extra time to make that pause and to make some observations and to practice being in that role. It's just
Mm,
simply adding that to your everyday life as it is. And once you start to get good at that, once that starts to become a little more natural, then we can start incorporating little new habits, little new actions. And that might start in my programs. We start the day with literally a 4 minute, 44 second meditation
mhm,
that helps you first thing, like before you get up, before you start into your regular routine, that disrupts the old patterns and sets you up to be intentional about how you're moving through your day. So we start with these little
mm,
pieces that start to allow us the opportunity to be more intentional. And then we start to incorporate new little habits. And that can be as little as, 10 minutes. You can do a yoga
mm,
routine for 10 minutes. And we
mhm,
start slow. And these things start to build on it, right? And then we just start developing our new list of go-to meals and snacks that are healthy and that we can whip up in 10 minutes or less. And there's a ton of them. That's how I eat. I don't plan. I don't do any meal planning. I don't do any calorie counting. I don't do any macro tracking. Things I make are healthy whole foods, and I whip them up in 10 minutes or less. And it is possible. And that's what I do, because most people are like, yeah, I'd love to spend, well, no, most people are not like, I'd love to spend an hour in the kitchen. I don't like to spend an hour in the kitchen. Some people enjoy cooking, so that's one thing. But most people are like, no, I need something that's doable, that will work with my life as it is. I'm not ready to change my entire life right now. But as we start to shift our mind and we start to shift our perspective and we start to incorporate these little habits, bigger shifts start to happen. And I've had
mm.
clients after just, 6 weeks in a coaching program have these huge breakthroughs. And I mean, they're shifting their careers after these programs that are, supposed to be about food, but it's so much bigger than food.
Right.
And that's exciting.
I like this idea of intention, and I'm applying it to what I do because that's the only thing I understand, me and my life. I don't understand you and your life, but I like to take in things that I listen to and perhaps learn from. And I'm going to take today as an example. So I didn't have much time before this interview, but there were things that had to get done. And with this SOS free thing that I've been doing, I absolutely have to have, I know myself, I have to have some sort of bean soup on hand for the entire week. So I've been making split pea soup or lentil soup. It's got to be there. I make 4 big jars, and it's there in emergencies or just, as part of the meal. And I also make a weekly bean to put in different things. And I was out, I had to have them. And in literally, don't like saying that word. I made the beans in an Instant Pot. And as soon as that was done, I had about 15 minutes before we started. And I chopped the carrots, onions, and celery, added the herbs, and put my soaked split peas in the Instant Pot. I'm looking at the Instant Pot right now. I see that it's done. And
Nice.
those things got done in very short amount of time, just because I'm used to doing it. It's something that I've thought about with intention.
Yes.
And you find these little nooks and crannies, these little places to make things happen.
That's brilliant. Great example. And yes, I remember going through some training and they were talking about, we talk about our plate being full. And when you start to make some of these shifts, we actually expand our plate. That's how it feels.
We
And
actually,
when
what
the
are plates?
expand, our
Ah,
plate
right.
ends up expanding,
Yes.
right? It's fascinating because we think our plate's full. And with some of these shifts and just our mindset shifts, and then starting to incorporate some of these different habits, it's like our plate expands, which is such a cool concept.
I had an expression I made up when I was very young. The more you do, the more you get done.
And exactly.
It's the same
It's
thing. Your
same
plate
thing.
gets bigger, you get more
Yep.
done.
Yep.
I like the plate.
Yes.
We have big plates. They tell us that we should be eating on smaller plates. But when we're eating food that's full of water and full of fiber, sometimes we need bigger plates.
This is true. Very true.
The other thing about the morning 4-minute and 44-second meditation, I like that. I have been noticing, I've been looking for where I can incorporate the things that I want to incorporate. And I'm fortunate because I don't have a desk job. And I haven't for most of my life. I used to be a consulting engineer and I could plan my own time. And now I do a variety of different things. And so time is my own. And I really worship. I love my morning. I love doing lots of things. I get up, I might make tea, I might sit and read. And I just love the peacefulness of it. But I also want to do more things. So I've had to be intentional about this and realize, okay, some of the things I'm reading, like the scrolling stuff, that can go. I can find more time here. I can get the yoga in here in the morning.
Yeah.
But it does take that intention.
It does.
Yeah.
And we go through different, periods in our lives. Like right now I'm in a creation mode and preparing for this new coaching program. So I've got a lot of more work to do that I'm choosing to get done, but everything's a choice. And I think using that vocabulary. So some of the things that we also work on in our coaching program is shifting vocabulary. And one of the phrases that I got rid of and recommend people getting rid of is the phrase "I have to," because there is very little we have to do. And if we can change that to "I choose to," or "I get to," just some really amazing things open up for us. We usually say, "Oh, I have to go to work. I can't do yoga. I have to go to work." No, I'm choosing to go to work. You don't have to go to work. Are there consequences to not going to work? Yes, there are some pretty big consequences, and it's still a choice. And everything's a matter of priorities. So my priorities shift. Right now, work is a priority and I'm doing yoga a couple less times a week. And right now I'm also in a strength phase where I'm like really excited about increasing the number of pull-ups I can do. So I go through phases too, where maybe I'm doing more yoga. And then I'm about to go to Guatemala for 3 weeks and we're going to be doing yoga for like 10 hours a day for 3 weeks as part of my teacher training. So yeah, things, which is so exciting to me. Can't wait, but I won't be doing as many pull-ups then, right? So things are ebb and flow. And if we can, like you said, be intentional and choose our priorities, knowing that everything is temporary, everything is the only thing we can count on is that everything's temporary. Everything's going to change.
When I was younger, I was a fan of the author Tom Robbins, and I forget what book he said this in, but he said, imagine getting up and calling your boss and say, I'm not coming into work today. I'm calling in well. I might be paraphrasing. I don't know exactly the way he put it, but the thing was he was feeling good and he didn't want to go to work.
I like it.
Now, obviously we all can't do it that way, but we can acknowledge our choices.
1,000%. And when we have that power, when we feel like we are writing our own stories for our lives, that's how we take charge of our health, take charge of our choices, take charge of our habits. But we need to feel that feeling of empowerment. And by giving that away, by saying I have to versus I choose to, there are consequences to that.
Well, I hope my listeners are getting a sense about who you are and how you're using this sort of vocabulary and language to reprogram our intentions the way we want to. We can make a choice to think the way we want. And I know Bruce Lipton is in there somewhere because he's all about this.
Yes.
One of my favorite things that he said, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, is that our cells react to the environment we perceive. And that was a lifeline like 18 years ago when I was going through my cancer experience and how I incorporated intense meditation in my life because I wanted every one of my 30 trillion plus cells to know what my goal was. So that was very profound for me. But we have just a few minutes left. What do you want us to know?
Yeah, so anybody, if this is resonating, I encourage you to get the emergency cravings kit as a first place to start. It's 100% free. Start.sexyfitvegan.com is where you can pick that up. From there, we've got an incredible challenge coming up the first week of December, and it's a cravings cure challenge. And it's going to really do a deep dive into understanding our cravings, your own cravings, and applying the framework, the peace framework, to your life. So that challenge I encourage you to check out too. But if you sign up for the cravings kit, you'll get notified about all that good stuff. And if you follow me on Instagram at sexyfitvegan, you'll get live updates, and I share a lot. I've also got a great newsletter, the Soul Aligned Sunday newsletter, because SEXY stands for, it's an acronym that
Mm.
stands for Soul Aligned, Embracing Your Body, Exploring Life Playfully. Yes, that's a little bit of a cheat, and I'm going to be okay with that with the X. And Y is you being you. So authenticity. So I've got a really fun newsletter that comes out. I kind of share my stories and the lessons along the way, and some of the things I'm reading, and the non-toxic workout gear I'm discovering, and just, on my own holistic path to becoming the healthiest version of myself, and aligning myself and my life with my values and my purpose, and sharing things that will resonate with others. So yeah, all that good stuff. And then the coaching program launches in January. But come into my world through the emergency cravings kit and follow me on Instagram, and you'll get all the updates.
We can't all be beautiful, but we can all be the healthiest versions of ourselves. And that should radiate around us. And I think it's important when people are listening, and there's so much out there in the world, and there are many influencers, but we need to look at them and see, are they radiating health? And that doesn't, some people can have a message and they can be really hot looking, but they may not be radiating health, because people can be, you mentioned before, you can be really physically fit, but inside you're not well.
Yes.
And we find that out later, of course. But just some food for thought there. And speaking of food, because this program is called It's All About Food, just tell me some of your favorite foods before we go. What does Ella Majors like to eat?
Well, I'm a salad for breakfast kind of person. So I'm a big proponent salad for breakfast. And I've got this incredible salad. I have it on my YouTube channel. But it's originally was kale, but I use different greens. But I do a lot of times kale, otherwise arugula or other super greens.
Mm.
It's got nutritional yeast in it, and there's a specific brand that I really like called Nutrilicious. And then I put in there sometimes tahini, sometimes different tahini is one of my favorites, and usually some sort of a white bean with pumpkin seeds on top, sometimes some tomatoes, but this and lemon juice, that is a key ingredient. But yeah, I'm a salad for breakfast kind of person. I just have to experiment so many things over the years. I've tried smoothies and fruit and different things, but having a salad as my first meal of the day, I just find, especially one like this that is really filling and satisfying and has so many nutrients in it, that it just sets me up with so much energy and helps me make better decisions, healthier decisions throughout the day. So yeah, I have salad every day. I have been doing a little bit of mushroom coffee, and it's a mushroom coffee that actually tastes like mushrooms. And so I put a
Yeah.
little
Mm.
organic soy milk in it, and it's going to sound gross to some people, but it kind of tastes a little like cream of mushroom soup to me.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
I think it's so delicious. So it's like
Yeah.
my big indulgence in the morning.
I'm getting the feeling, since you've gotten off your refined sugar craving, you're more of a savory
Yeah,
person, maybe. Yeah, it's funny how our
absolutely.
tastes change.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I keep it really simple. I mean, I'll have a huge bowl of broccoli for dinner. Like, I
Mhm.
really like to think outside the box and not think we have to do things any certain way. And sometimes I'll just roast a huge bowl of broccoli. Also, I'll take frozen broccoli, let it thaw, and then mix in there, a couple different things. You could do tahini and sauerkraut, which sounds a little crazy, but you cut up the broccoli and you just put tahini and sauerkraut. Done. It's delicious. Otherwise, I'll do a little bit of peanut butter and the liquid brag aminos, and some peanut butter. So it's like peanut butter sauce. I know that's salt, but
That's okay. Not
less
too
salt
much.
than less salt than soy sauce. And then that'll be a meal in and of itself. So, and I have a book, I think there's still some left on Amazon with over 100 recipes, really simple stuff.
Okay, great. Well, it's been an absolute delight talking with you. I'm so glad you're on the planet doing what you're doing. I wish you all the best with everything you're doing in your coaching program. We'll be more in touch about that later when the craving thing launches.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Caryn.
Thank you, Ella Majors. Be well. Hey, everybody. That was Ella Majors of Sexy Fit Vegan, sexyfitvegan.com. Thanks for joining me for another episode of It's All About Food, sponsored by Responsible Eating and Living, the nonprofit that my partner Gary DiMattei and I founded back in 2011. If you've been listening to this podcast for a long time, if you're new to this podcast, if you like this podcast, I hope you will take the time to rate us on your favorite podcast app, wherever you listen to this podcast. We can always use a little support, a little boost. So I ask you for that. Reach out to me at info@realmeals.org if you have any comments, anything you'd like to add, questions, or information you care to share with me. I always love to hear from you. Have a delicious week, everybody.